Welcome, or welcome back. This is Bleeding Red and the Empress Hotel, one of the most haunted locations in the world.
Kings and queens, movie stars, and visitors from around the world have all enjoyed Victoria's Fairmont Empress Hotel. The Empress opened its doors on January 20th, 1908. Bruce Kirkpatrick has This Week in History.
It was a crown jewel of the Canadian Pacific Railway on the shores of Victoria's Inner Harbour. The Empress Hotel, now the Fairmont Empress, has a busy past recorded in the archives of the Royal BC Museum. In 1901, land was reclaimed in the James Bay mudflats, land upon which the Empress was built. The causeway in front of the hotel did not yet include pedestrian walkways in 1906. The hotel was nearing completion in 1907 and welcomed its first guests on the 20th of January 1908, as detailed in the Daily Colonist. First guest was Mrs. Stuart Gordon, wife of the first manager, and the Empress thrived.
Hollywood celebrity, queens, kings, everyday people, conventions from all over BC, celebrations, the end of war, the beginning of peace.
1917, an Empress Hotel menu advising no beef available on Tuesdays and Fridays. Rationing, it was wartime, saving meat for the troops overseas. 1929, Winston Churchill, in the hat on the right, came to address Victoria's Canadian Club. 1937, an Empress Hotel menu celebrating the coronation of George VI. The King and Queen Elizabeth, mother of our current Queen, visited the Empress in 1939.
The royal tour came through to prepare people for what everybody thought was the inevitable war that was coming, and it was coming.
The Empress Hotel was designed by Francis Rattenbury, who also designed the buildings next door, his two architectural masterpieces. The hotel was added to the National Register of Historic Sites in 1981. But in 1966, there was talk of tearing the whole thing down.
There was a serious discussion about that, about going modern. It was defeated, and they launched Operation Teacup to save the grand old lady.
In the 1950s, bellman Earl Taylor was part of the Empress bowling team and left his shoes behind. In 2003, Eleanor Stewart came to tea on her 100th birthday, bringing Theodore with her, a bear she got in 1908, a Steve bear with a button in his ear. Victoria's Fairmont Empress Hotel has a lot of stories to tell, going back 105 years ago, this week in history. Forgot to turn in your keys? Just pop them in the mailbox. Return postage guaranteed.
This Week in History, brought to you by the Royal BC Museum, bringing British Columbia's stories together.
So we renovated in June 2007. We finished our renovation in June 2017, and it was a renovation that cost $65 million. It started out as a renovation at $35 million, and then escalated to $65 million. As some of us were talking about the other day, because we had to repoint all of the brick in the front of the hotel because of the damage from the ivy. And then also, this is the first time in the history of the hotel that we've had central heat and air conditioning in the rooms. So it's a modern convenience that, for those of you that live here, know we generally don't need aircon, but it's certainly something that international travelers expect. So because we are a luxury property, it's something that we've installed. So previously, this room was actually quite a smaller, dark room, and where the balcony is, it came right out to these pillars, and then for those of you who get here, the registration was along this side. So the newest installation in this area is our beautiful chandelier, and it's called Flower Twill. It is done by a company in the Czech Republic known as Lasvit, and they specialize in light sculpture. This is their specialty. So 250,000 Austrian crystals, and when they brought it into the building, it took about 2 weeks to install that scaffolding. It's probably been one of the most photographed spots in the hotel since the restoration. And also, just above us is the chef's outdoor rooftop garden. So everything that you eat in the hotel, especially if it's edible flowers and herbs, all comes from the garden above. And one of the most beautiful things is at night, when the lights are off, this chandelier glows on all of the gardens up there. It's a really pretty spot. If you're staying on Fairmont Gold, you can see it from the side windows at night. Just have a peek tonight because it's really pretty. So this part of the hotel hotel remains intact. The one difference is that we opened up this staircase so that people could, like all of you, take photos of the lobby. So I think I mentioned to a few of you that on November 28th we're bringing back our Empress Christmas tree in the main lobby. It hasn't been here since before the restoration, and it was one of the things that everyone asked to return. So we'll be lighting that up on the 28th. It's a 16-foot tree, and from the front lobby, when you look at the Christmas tree, this will look like the crown on the top of the tree. So I feel like this room is now sort of the crown jewel of the hotel. I mean, for many reasons. One is because if you look up at the architecture has remained intact since the hotel opened in 1908. Interesting to note that the wood columns are all original, as is all the fretwork in the ceiling. Interesting to note, though, that it's not wood. So this is Victorian horsehair and Italian plaster. And it was a technique that was used widely in the Victorian era. It is quite an interesting, because if you look really closely, you can actually see that it's not wood. You'll see the imperfections. When we were renovating, this space actually opened in June of 2016. It opened a year before, my apologies. And we had to bring a specialist in to restore the parts that needed to be changed and to match the stain. But to me, it's one of the most beautiful things. This space, which used to be known as the Harborside Room, this is the very first time in the history of the hotel that this space has been used as a public space. So it was always a function space with the best views, obviously, of the harbor, but it's the first time it's been open to everyone to sort of enjoy. And for me, I think it's the perfect place to have a public house or a bar. And of course the hotel was named for Queen Victoria, who was also the Empress of India in the last 12 years of her reign. And if you look just behind you, you can see the Indian influences in the arches, and those were intentional. So the next time you look at the outside of the building, you'll also note that the veranda arches are also Indian inspired. Any questions? Please just ask as we go along. We're going to do sort of a modified version because Chef really wants to take you in the kitchen. So we're going to do a modified version. So this is the most storied room in the hotel. This is the lobby lounge, formerly known as the tea lobby, formerly known as the reception lobby. So the front, when the hotel was built, this was the main entrance of the hotel. And that was in the day when Victorian properties had these big, grand lobbies where everyone would come and sit and socialize. And so I'll show you a photo when we go through, but this was all reception area. And then behind you is the famous palm court. And this is just, they're just redoing from the big gala that was here Saturday night. But if you look up at the stained glass dome on the inside, so it was an original installation with the hotel, and in the 60s renovation, they decided it was very out of style. So they covered it up with plywood. And then in the 80s renovation, right, they rediscovered it. So it kind of went forgotten for about 20 years under 2 new owners. And in the 80s renovation, they went to install a light, and the ceiling wouldn't hold the light. So they realized it was just sort of a simple, I guess, plywood or thin wood, and they pulled it down. Parts of it were damaged, and they went about having it restored. So when the hotel opened, this was the tea lobby. Similar to the Plaza Hotel, which the Palm Court hosts tea every day there. This is where tea was originally held, and it did so for about 15 years. The reason that it stopped, well, twofold, but one was because the shape and the form of the dome, this carries sound. So if Mrs. Jones was sitting over here and Mrs. Smith was sitting over here and they were having their afternoon chat, you can hear everything happening on the other side of the room. It is a ballroom. We had a big fancy ball there on Saturday night. And so because of the complaints, they moved the tea. In the next iteration of design, they moved the tea out here. Also, the tea was becoming very popular by that time. They needed the extra space anyways, but it's a fun story. And then of course, this is the tea lobby, and I'll tell you all about that when we're sitting having tea. This is where the hotel sits on James Bay, on this bog of water right here. And then this was shortly after the hotel was built, I think 1913, so a few years after, oh I apologize, after it was open. So the area's changed a little bit, actually quite a lot. This is our Royal Mail Service, which still is in existence today. It's one of the oldest working Canadian mail distribution centers in the country. And it says Royal Mail because, of course, we are a member of the Commonwealth, and our mail system used to be called Royal Mail before it became Canada Post.
Well, all the old trunk rail hotels have them.
They do, and it's beautiful.
The Frontenac does too.
Yes,
Yeah.
and so if you go into the gift shop, they have postcards that are pre-stamped, so that you can just put your letter in, and you can all the way up for if you're staying on the 6th floor. It just doesn't work on 7 and 8. And then this is part of our Christmas at the Empress program too, where kids can send their letters to Santa Claus. It's ceiling. We have China that designed after the ceiling. So this is probably one of the most popular booking rooms in the hotel. We do about 40 small weddings in this room a year. It is the most beautiful place for an intimate dinner, and we have a china pattern that matches the ceiling. You did. Was it a beautiful wedding? And so we do have china that is in the gift shop, and it's actually up on the Fairmont Gold Lounge floor too. So everything in this room, with the exception of the white lights, is original. This is an original ice box that was refitted on the inside. All the guts were pulled out, and it's now just like shelving and plywood inside. But it was all redone to maintain the original pieces. We just had a specialist come in to redo and value all the clocks in the hotel. So I'm really anxious to get that news back. We don't have it back yet. They're going to fix all the clocks and give us value on them and date them. Pretty room, right? Such a beautiful room.
Any secret corridors and hidden rooms?
The fireplace moves.
That's interesting. Everyone asks me that. I have yet to find. I know. There are back corridors and staff units for sure, as any large old hotel has. Banff Springs is famous for its back corridors. We have them as well. We don't have the same catacomb of hallways that they do, but we'll see. If he takes us downstairs, you'll see where our catacombs are. Our original, when we used to have house phones. And my goal for this space is to turn it into an Instagram moment with old phones, and I really think that people would, because it's just such a wasted space now, and I think that would be a really fun thing to do. So this is our lower function space. It's been completely redone. And we brought in an Italian design company who really worked with the existing lighting that was important for us to keep it here, and then bring in all of this new Art Deco furniture that really spoke to a new era of the Empress. So these are all historic photos from the past. For those of you that don't know, we are named after Queen Victoria, who never set foot in Canada in her entire lifetime. So she was our Commonwealth Queen, but she never came to Canada. However, her ancestors, or her granddaughter, our Queen, has been here 10 times. So
At the
Queen
property or in
Elizabeth,
Canada?
at the property, in Victoria and at the property. So Queen Victoria II is the most visited monarch at the hotel. In the early days, monarch used to stay in the hotel. They would have a floor or 2 floors. And now, you know, everybody is more fiscally responsible, including the monarch. And so the Commonwealth owns Government House. And so when, for instance, Will and Kate were here, they stayed at Government House. They come here for their state functions, but they stay in a property that they own because it's easier on their taxpayers who you know.
Less of a scam.
It is, and it's also nice that they're being respectful of, I think, those that that pay taxes. So this is where we're having tea. So that's when it was the hotel reception lobby when the hotel first opened. Cool. Mm-hmm.
No, because there wasn't a whole entrance room.
There was not actually this room here.
Didn't exist.
This room did exist, but not beyond,
Yeah, not
right?
beyond.
And the Humboldt wing was added in 1929. So otherwise we were just proper, and then we added on to the back. So this is new. We've just put this in about 8 weeks ago. This shows all of our historic china. The mural that you see in the back with Princess Elizabeth, this is just before she became queen, is in the room that I was talking about that was never open to the public. This is Q Bar. And yes, so what we have here is this is the King's China on the bottom, which we refer to as the Empress China. We're going to be eating off of replicas of that today when we have our tea at the Empress. These are original pieces, and you know, please come up and have a look at them because the blue is all hand inked in this china. This setting right here is worth about $18,000. So the first thing I did was changed out the glass in this case, redid the locks, and had to do everything so that it was secure. The china in the top is from the photo that you see. When Princess Elizabeth did her cross-country tour, as the royals do, they eat off their own china, so they brought a 240 set china piece. We were the last stop on the tour, and they gifted it to the Empress Hotel. So we have it in our coffers, and we do use it. We would use it for a royal visit as well. And then all of the silver pieces, which are really interesting, those are all Canadian Pacific Hotels history. These are all silver pieces right up until, well, 1993 when the change happened. And they're all different CP Hotel logos on them, and interesting. So feel free to have a look if you want to. We're going to go meet Chef Morgan.
Okay.
It's nice to have them in history, and in our basement area, we have all of the old silver from the hotel. I mean, I don't know, chefs just tend to be pack rats by nature, but we have all of it. So it's nice that we've been able to preserve that history, and when we were redoing this cabinet, I said it would be really nice to show some of our culinary history.
Here we go. And if you can't hear me, then just tell me and I'll speak up louder. So this here is, we call this a tea box. Some people refer to it as a telling box if they don't like working in it. But this is where all the afternoon tea actually comes together. So you'll see a little bit later in the tour how the bits and pieces get here. But basically what happens when you come and sit down for tea is the server will ring in your table individually, and then somebody who's working in here will actually assemble the tea tier at that time based on everything that's their request and whatnot. And then we have warm scones go on for that stand before it gets run out. So this is kind of the front of house nerve center for tea. And then I'll show you the back of house nerve center. Have a lot of communication. So this here is all of our a la carte operations. So this is everything for queue, for the bar, and for room service. So anything where somebody's taking an order, all of that cooking happens here. We're very lucky in the hotel because we actually have 2 hot lines. So many kitchens you go to, you only have 1 line. So then you have this fight that happens every day between the breakfast cook and the lunch cook. Right around 11:30, where the breakfast cook is taking their time getting off the line and the lunch cook wants to get on. So they're always right here. We don't have that, so we have the breakfast can be still focused on breakfast. Lunch can come in and get set up. Everybody's much happier. So we have the two hot sides. This is the breakfast, and then everything else happens over here, hot side wise for food and bar and iron. And then this line here is cold side. So everything cold happens here. So we plate all of our appetizers and our desserts off of this line here. And the cold cooks kind of move depending on what's happening, what meal period. So if it's breakfast, they'll be focused more down that end, and lunch and dinner, they'll be focused more down on this.
So the delicious piece that you prepared for us yesterday all came out here?
Actually not.
Okay.
So we still had queue running and room service running.
Yeah.
So we had folks servicing that last night. We used a little bit of this side here to heat it up, but I'll show you on this side over here where we actually set up and serviced it. So this area here is basically just multi-use prep area. So what we do here is anybody that needs a table, you need somewhere to work, we got lots of tables. So depending on the time of day and whatnot, you see different cooks in here. So what we did last night was we moved this out here, and we have here a plating belt. So it's actually a conveyor belt. We have our I'll show you here. Our largest sit-down dinners are for 1,000 people. So we need a lot of logistics behind us to be able to service that. So last night we put all of our bits and pieces into play, all our toys that we have. So we were actually plating on the belt. So we had like 5 or 6 people. So then typically what happens is we're on the belt, and then you might be doing carrots, and you might be doing mashed potatoes, and you're doing the chicken, and you're doing the sauce. Everybody has their thing that they do, and the plates just roll by. And then when we're doing something for a big group, we will put lids on them, and then they'll go in the hot box. And then you can just push that hot box to whatever room is having the dinner and service it there. Last night, no lids, of course, it just went straight in the room. So we had, all the servers lined up here, and all the plates rolling off and coming out. So this is our banquet space, our production space. So the same way that we have an area that's just for a la carte, we have an area that's just for banquets. So this is hot banquets up here. We're making all our soup stocks and sauces from scratch. So you can see here we've got a chicken stock going on. That was put on last night, and when the cooks come in this evening, they'll take it off and make their soups or reduce it down for their stock or what have you. So yeah, again, this area can get very busy. We get very dependent on if we have banquets booked. If we don't, like right now, you can see there's nothing going on. Last night in here, it was different. So, a lot going on. If you ever wonder how you make scrambled eggs for 300 people, I will show you how we do that. So these are actually giant frying pans. We call them tilt pans because we can actually tilt them. So these are like workhorses for us. So if we need, in the morning, maybe we're making scrambled eggs. We might be making scrambled eggs in these. We might be making pancakes or French toast. And then in the afternoon, we might be serving chicken or something like that for lunch or for dinner, or we're making curries or stews or whatever might be happening in these guys. So very, very busy pieces of equipment for us. And yeah, so we're not trying to do cooking for that many people in small pots and pans. We've got the cooking media for it. This is our dishwasher.
I need a dishwasher. I need one of those.
Yeah. So we actually have 2 of these in the building. And this is worth about 140 grand. It's a flight machine. We call it a flight machine because of the way that the dishes go through. We don't actually, aside from the glassware, everything else just goes on a conveyor belt. And it doesn't stop. It goes all the way through. It takes about 2.5 minutes from start to finish. And typically takes 2 people to operate. So one person loading, one person unloading. And as we get busier, we add more people. So then we have people that are consolidating things, stacking all like with like, racking glassware, sorting cutlery, and then people that will be putting stuff back away. Because as soon as we have it clean, then we put it back into service, whether it's pots, pans, glasses, or whatnot. If you think again about, you know, a dinner for us, kind of an average size dinner is for 300 people. That's more than 1,000 plates right there, because you've got 3 courses, you've got bread and butter, all of the cutlery, all the glassware, and so on. And then we'll actually run this in cycles. So the first thing we run through is glassware, because the water will have nice, clean, pristine water, clean with the glassware. And then the next thing we run through would be our plates. The next thing we run through is our cutlery. And then we start running through pots and pans and things like that, the more fishing equipment. It doesn't matter if it has a little watermark on it. And then we'll drop the water. So about every 2 hours, we're dropping the water and refilling the machine. So garde-manger, I'm not sure what it exactly translates to, but it's cold food.
It does. Well, it keeps food. Keep food.
Keep food.
Keep
Okay.
food.
Keep frozen food. Garde-manger.
There you go. So basically all cold food happens down here, mainly for banquets, but it's also where tea begins its day. So one of the first things that happens down here is we start making the tea sandwiches. So the tea sandwiches will get made in here, and then they will transition over here to this tea room here. So then this is the kitchen nerve center for tea. So we'll have 1 or 2 cooks in here every day that will, come on in, don't be shy. They'll come in here, they'll start their day again, they make a couple of sandwiches, and then it's all about plating. So we do busy days in the summer, we'll be at about 400 guests, sometimes over 400. So we have a breakdown of the reservations and the plating, table by table. This is a 2, this is a 3, and then again all of the dietaries. So to give you a bit of an idea of what the dietaries are like for us, this here, these are our menus. So this is our regular tea. So we have every single ingredient on here laid out. And then each one of these is another dietary tea. So gluten-free, lactose-free, nut-free, diabetic, no shellfish, like every single possible permutation. And then we have all of the mise en place backed up there for it. And that's one of the reasons why we have such a close connection with the little tea box upstairs, is because of the dietaries, making sure that everybody's getting their dietaries. Okay. Now we're going to go to the basement. So one of our challenges, it's a challenge in every hotel I've ever worked in, is storage. So that's why this stuff is all down here. So anything we put down here, it comes down here because we don't need it on a regular basis. When it comes up, we have a very strict policy, and it comes up and it goes to the dish machine, no matter what. Just dust or whatever down here. So anything that comes down, it comes down for sometimes a short stay, sometimes for a long stay. And no matter what, it's back up and goes through the dish machine. It's clean. So these are kind of like little storage hiding holes. And I'll show you when we go down this way. We have some other interesting bits and pieces. So if you look underneath here, you can actually see this is where our keg room is for Q Bar. So it's a little bit of a challenge for us to change kegs out. So the kegs are in there. You have to duck in underneath, and we created a walk-in fridge that has all of our kegs in there underneath that. So we're, wherever we find a little bit of space, we definitely try to use it. Look at this guy. From here on, then it's basically just the pilings. So the hotel, I forget the number, Tracy probably knows it, like over 100 cedar pilings. And so this is an example of one of them here though. So inside that cement, there's cedar pilings. So, and then there's hundreds of those going all the way back underneath the hotel. So it's really quite interesting. One of the urban myths is that the hotel is sinking and it's listing and all that kind of stuff. It's not. So there's actually like a really old school, really interesting measurement that we have. There's like this weight that's pinned on the wall. So it's a big metal rod like that, and there's markings. And you can see if the hotel was sinking, it wouldn't sink perfectly evenly and it would start to list. And you can see that it's not, it's perfectly flat.
Wow.
So did it sink at one point, 100 years ago when it was first installed? Sure. But it's long since settled. So it's kind of interesting. Although we won't go all the way back there because it's quite a process.
That's so cool to see the foundation of the whole hotel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Amazing. It's interesting too because it's kind of like the beginning of the city, right? Sort of how everything.
We decided we wanted to do popcorn, and I was doing a tasting for the F&B and the general manager, stuff like that. So I wanted to have 5 different flavors of popcorn. So we had Parmesan and black pepper and garlic and rosemary and honey and truffle, and we had all these different flavors. And I had 4 of them figured out. It was about 5 minutes before they were coming. I'm like, I need one more flavor. So I looked in our dry store and we have this charcoal seasoning. Oh, I'll just throw that on there. Great. I've got 5. I figured we're going Parmesan and black pepper or something like that. And everybody tried the popcorn and everybody picked the charcoal. So that's it, and now we can't get rid of it.
And it's so iconic. I came a while ago and they tried to give me another flavor.
Occasionally we do run out of the charcoal. I guess that might be why. So this area here, I don't know how many like old time Victoria ice we have, but Garden, what did it used to be called, Rick? Garden Cafe, right? So if you remember the Garden Cafe, so the Garden Cafe used to be through these doors here. So this was the kitchen that would service Garden Cafe. So when we closed Garden Cafe, now this is the Shaughnessy Ballroom. Now this area here is used mainly for staff. So we have over 500 colleagues we cook for. So that means about 250 to 300 meals a day that we do in the staff room. So, and we have a dedicated chef every day. So Rick's here 5 days a week cooking just for the staff. And then, sorry? We're talking about that. We are. Oh yeah. And then there was a question before about the food for Fairmont Gold. So then behind you, you see Hep here kind of working away. So this is our Fairmont Gold cold corner. So Hep is working on all the Fairmont Gold cold stuff for the next couple of days. So we're always working a day ahead. Let's go see everybody's favorite room. So what you guys are witnessing here is the creative process. So every year we do some kind of gingerbread display. So this goes up in the upper lobby, and the pastry team always takes the lead on that. And this year they've come up with the theme of Dallas Road.
Nice.
So you can see kind of the cliffs here, and then down here will become the beach and the water and that sort of thing. So every one of our pastry cooks are going to do an individual gingerbread house, and then they collaborate on what does it all look like. So they've been working on this. How long you guys working on this now? About a month already?
Here and there.
Yeah, bits and pieces here and there. So yeah, they're slowly starting to put it together, and then there's still probably a good week's worth of work here to get it up to our amazing standards.
Do you work with the university or apprenticeship board or?
You were asking about apprenticeship and whatnot. 2/3 of our people are Red Seal chefs.
Oh wow.
So we have, I would say, probably 30 of the cooks are Red Seal, And then of course myself and the sous chefs all have our sales.
And out of those, how many of them actually started as a first-year apprentice?
Everybody would have had it at one point in their career, but we have people that have definitely gone to school here, like did their apprenticeship, and they've been here for over 40 years.
I was just gonna ask, who is your longest employee in the kitchen?
So our longest employee in the kitchen is So. She wasn't in Garde Manger when we were there, but she's been here over 45 years.
Wow.
So pastry shop. So this is where all the magic happens. It's the best smelling room by far. Smells a little better than the basement probably. So in here, again, much like upstairs, we're cooking as much from scratch as we can. We buy a few things like tart shells and stuff that might be very labor intensive, but then all of our fillings and our cakes, hi. Yes.
I said act surprised.
Act surprised? We'll get you a cookie. What's your favorite flavor? Chocolate. Okay. I think we can do that. So, and then there's 10 cooks plus our pastry chef Dominic, who you all saw last night. And then Raju was one of the cooks that was on the dinner last night. Seiji, did you help at all with the mise en place for the dinner? A little bit? Yeah.
Thank you.
And then Albert, who you saw out there, is still working on the gingerbread houses. Albert was part of the team last night as well on the dessert there. So one of Dominic's main skills is chocolate work. So I think you saw that last night, beautiful chocolate work. So he's quite an accomplished chocolatier. We already have 2 signature chocolates. So our previous pastry chef went to Paris and working with cacao berry, and we came up with a couple of signature chocolate flavors. What do you think? That one? That's the best one?
What do you say?
Thank you.
Would anybody else like a chocolate chip cookie while we have them out? So, like I kind of trim it to make it oval. So instead of just cutting it like that, and trim around. So we did that before with cereal. And then when we cook it, I made sure to keep that shape so we're not sticking in your bag. Just wrapped it tight. And then
So Fairmont Gold is to your left, same level, but to me it's just the sparkling chandelier.
We look down on.
Yeah, you're right next to me, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
We're right. This is 2, right?
So this is 1.
Yeah. That's
So now that you've gotten to know the hotel a little bit better, let's talk about the ghosts. Number 1 is Lizzie McGrath, the maid who died in 1909. There's an article coming up that details how she died in 1909 because she went out onto a fire escape to say her prayers with her rosary before going into her hotel room at the end of the night. But the excuse me, the contractor had removed part of the fire escape and she fell to her death. And that was the end of Lizzie McGrath. A researcher actually found for a long time they just called her the maid, but a researcher had gone through and done a whole bunch of research and had discovered that this one particular maid in 1909 had died. And they say that if you're lucky, you can still see her sometimes tidying up on the 6th floor. She's quite a haunting specter to see, but she's seen quite frequently and she's known to be reasonably benign. So she's one of the haunted guests at the Empress Hotel. Probably one of the quieter of the group, with definitely some of the other ones being a little bit more outgoing. It's sad because Lizzie would have probably been only a child. I imagine she was probably 18 or so when she passed away. Our next ghost is the elevator ghost, or the elderly woman in pajamas. She's seen throughout the hotel wandering around asking for directions, only to have people turn around and she's gone. She's been one of the more frequently spotted by guests in the hotel, as a lot of the other ghosts are seen more by staff. The elderly woman is definitely more often seen by guests and visitors, as she's quite often and frequently seen in the corridors. And again, everyone thinks it's a real elderly woman. They walk up, she asks for directions, they turn around, and when they go to give them to her, she just disappears. And it's like she was never, ever, ever there. They don't have a name as to this guest, but I did read up on that they think they know who it might be, or they have an expectation they might know who it might be, and it was a person who had stayed there kind of longer term in a role as not necessarily just a night-to-night guest, but as actually kind of living in the hotel for a period, and that when she died, I guess that's where she decided she wanted to hang her hat in the afterlife, was wandering the hallways of one of her favorite places. I've actually stayed at the Empress myself a number of times, and there are definitely, I'd call them cold spots, but being a little bit more sensitive to some of these things as they tend to be, there's definitely a feeling of that there are people remaining in the hotel and in the hallways. Not just the 3. There's lots of stories of people swearing that they've seen other Victorian era, particularly guests in the hallways, people from around 1900s or 1909, and the Fairmont Empress is actually directly across the street from the legislature building that was also built by our next ghost, who is the hotel's architect, Francis Rattenbury. He died in 1935, and he is definitely, of the group, the most exciting. He was a Brit, born in England. He had come to become one of the more prominent architects, particularly in parts of British Columbia. He spent a large portion of his life here. He, in Victoria, most notably, built the Empress and our legislature building. Now, both of these buildings, and I live where they are, so I've been in them many, many times. Both of these buildings have issues that had to do with the fact that he was awarded contracts to build them I think he was about 25. And the man was, he has a lot of talk and not necessarily quite as organized of a builder as he should have been. Lots and lots and lots of problems. One of the ongoing jokes, if you're from Victoria, is that the legislature building is actually built backwards. So it faces away from the ocean, which was not its intent. This picture is actually of Francis, his wife Alma, and her love interest, George Stoner, and I'll get into that more in just a minute here. Anyway, so there's quite a few more buildings that Francis had a hand in, but those are kind of the 2 in Victoria that are both very, very haunted. The legislature is absolutely and completely haunted, as is the hotel itself. and they've had many, many, many important guests since it's on set. If any royal figures or anybody particularly of note comes to Victoria proper, they stay at the Empress. That's the legislature building. That's actually it on the back side. So that's away from the big pavilion and the ocean. So that's actually the back of the building. Again, it got flipped when they were building it, which is kind of hilarious. I used to do a lot of stuff with the BC archives and the legislature and some of the old government-managed building records and historical building records, and in the plans you can see that he actually flipped it and inverted it and made it backwards. Anyway, just kind of a funny little offshoot about Francis, if I may call him Francis, Mr. Rattenbury. So when Francis was kind of done building the Empress and some of these more impressive buildings that he had a contributing factor in. He did some in Vancouver as well. I think he did one for the BC Museum. He's done a number of buildings throughout BC and Western Canada. So he met Elma Pakenham, who was just getting divorced at the time that they met. She had a son named Christopher Pakenham from her first marriage, and she was 30 years Francis Rattenbury's junior. Now, they had a son of their own named John, so they had 2 boys, and in 1929, after living in Victoria for a very, very, very long time, they returned to Europe, and at that point, I guess, Francis was not particularly available, so Alma begins an affair with their chauffeur/handyman, a man named George Stoner, who is 18 years old. So George and Alma decide that the best way to deal with Francis is to murder him, as he is no longer what Alma would like to have for herself, for her life. So they actually, in England, stabbed and murdered Francis Rattenbury in 1935, and they both went to court. As a result, George Stoner was sentenced to life imprisonment for the murder of Francis Rattenbury, and he died in prison. Alma was completely acquitted. They kind of both did he did it, she did it, it was his idea, it was her idea. And back in that period, you would not normally imprison a woman for something like that. So Alma was acquitted, but took her own life a few days later. She threw herself into a river. There's a bunch of news articles from the time coming up here that talk about her throwing herself in the river. I tried to play them kind of slow enough that if you want, you can read the headlines. You can also find them just by Googling them. If you want to learn more about Alma Rattenbury, she is. Very, very lovely woman. She served in, I believe, World War I, not World War II. I don't think she took part in World War II, but she was very much involved in World War I. She married a gentleman, had their son Christopher, and then got divorced, and of course married Francis, and then murdered Francis. And kind of an interesting. Living in Victoria, I was unaware of that was a huge portion of the hotel's history, was that the the family in charge of the design there's a family picture, had this much drama. And back then, having your 18-year-old chauffeur kill your husband, and they were people of means. They were both from wealthier families, lots and lots of money involved. So to have your kind of fall guy, I guess, George Stoner, assist in the murder of your very, very, very wealthy husband, and then when, of course, he gets found guilty and put in jail for the rest of his life, jumping off of a bridge into a river to take your own life. It's very dramatic and Victorian. Would make a good. It's probably been a Hallmark movie. I know. I when I was doing my research, I saw a whole bunch of. There've been some books written on it. Because I think there's his grave. That's a picture of Alma. I think if you went kind of more into the drama of it, there's probably. I believe I saw somewhere, and I didn't get a name, I don't think, off of what I was looking at that was in relation to that Francis was... There might have been an affair on his side as well. I'm not seeing it now. I read... To put these stories together, I read so much stuff, and I'm trying to get better about going off script so that I don't sound like I am boring. I promise you I'm not. Just as I get more experience with doing the podcasts and just more comfortable, I guess. And I'm trying to go off of script more because I don't really need to. I don't want to lose any details. These stories are so intricate and so interesting to me, and the research is just fascinating. I was a researcher for years and years and years. I worked for the BC government. I worked for BC Ambulance. I worked a time for the Health Authority doing legal research and document research, and finding out the history of some of these notorious stories and the history behind some of these things is just so interesting. So if you ever get a chance to visit Victoria, I definitely, there are spooky kind of ghost-style tours you can do that include a number of sites in Victoria, namely the legislature, the Empress, and we have a place called Market Square that's walking distance from all of these places. Does these huge archways. And if you ever go there, and if you go on there's a fairly hefty culture here of people that do the ghost toury type things. If you ever go on a ghost tour and they take you through Market Square, they used to hang people there. It's right off the water, and if you were a treacherous individual, or, just somebody who they decided they didn't like, or you did something wrong, or back in the early 1900s, I don't think it took much, to be honest, particularly if you were poor. They would hang you up there and leave you there with a sign of what your crime supposedly was, so that you would be in place to show others not to do whatever you had supposedly done. So there's kind of a little piece. There's also, if you see when they go down into the basement of the Empress, you can see that there's catacombs. The catacombs go all under downtown Victoria, and they actually hook up between, I believe it's the Empress and the BC Archive, the BC Museum, and the Legislature. They all hook up, so you can actually walk underground between all of them. You used to be able to do it quite regularly. I think the tunnels were put there during Prohibition, if I'm not mistaken. You used to be able to walk through them. But of course, there's rats, there's all kinds of stuff, so they've boarded them up. You can access them from, I believe, the BC Legislature, and the archives still have some access, but it's pretty cool. So here's a whole bunch of the 1900s, very scandalized. So there is Alma and George. It's just Alma talking about how she drowned herself in the English River. Very, very dramatic. It was very Shakespearean. But I guess at the time of her death, I think she was in her 30s. She wasn't overly old, because, of course, Frances was significantly older than she was. There's another one about her. Stabs and drowns herself. 6 knife thrusts in the breast. I love reading old newspaper articles. They have such a dramatic sense to them. Stoner sentenced to die for murder. Mrs. Battenbury freed. So he was originally sentenced to die, George Stoner, but because he was 18 and they figured that he had been coerced, I guess, or in some way affected by Alma, they commuted it to a life sentence. Yeah, there's her falling, being found dead. Very, very dramatic. If you like this kind of content and you're digging my videos, or you just like to come hang out with me and listen to me talk about cool stuff, please like and subscribe. It's amazing for me to be able to make more videos. I love making them, and I love having people watch them and tell me what they think about them. Have a great, great day.